I have the opportunity to live with a friend's Tesla for a week, and I thought I'd make a little video about it. It's a neat car. This is a P85, but it's a year or two old. It's not the most current one. It does not have the autopilot. It does not have the insane mode for acceleration. But it's neat how the door handles are flush to the car to make it very streamlined and aerodynamic. And as I approach the car, they're going to pop out. And so now I can reach out and grab it, and the door opens up. As you open the doors up, it kind of boots up. So being a warm day, the air conditioning is turned on to start cooling down the interior. So that noise you hear is the air conditioning compressor running. But, you know, it has no engine like a conventional car, so it has a pretty roomy front trunk, little compartment that kind of goes way back into the dashboard there. It's got your windshield washer reservoir right there, and that's about it. It's a really good-sized four-door sedan. The back seats have quite a lot of room, and the floor is completely flat. You know, there's no tunnel or anything for a drive shaft or exhaust, so it's easy to get in and scoot all the way over, scoot to the middle seat. And it's quite roomy, a lot of leg room and good headroom in there too. The rear trunk is also quite roomy. Little flap here to access the stuff, and it looks like the seats fold down so you can even put in large things. And in the back trunk, there's a little folding jump seat that it kind of all folds down to a little compartment in the bottom there. And it's 2 seats, and they're for children. I think they have a maximum weight of 70 pounds. But you can sit back there and get a rear-facing view, so that allows the car to hold 7 people total. The rear hatch closes electrically. I've slid into the back seat to kind of show you know, what the dashboard in the front looks like. Obviously the big feature is in the dashboard is this large touch screen that's about the size of a few iPads stacked on top of each other. And there's the other striking thing is the apparent lack of switches or knobs or buttons. It's a very sleek, smooth interior, nice curves, nicely designed, nice mix of kind of brushed stainless accents with gloss black, and then the black dash, and this car has the kind of the light tan. The front part of the sunroof can open up and slide over the back part. There are window switches and mirror adjustment switches in the driver's door, and all the other doors have a single window switch. And there is a button right here next to the touch screen for the glove compartment, and there's another button on this side of the touch screen for the hazard lights. And then on the right side of the steering wheel, you've got this little stalk. You push it up for reverse, down for drive, and you kind of push the little button on the end for park. And that's it. On the touch screen, you have the choice of either making it split screen, where you see 2 different things. Right now I have a web browser and Google Maps up. I can select, you know, the radio and kind of energy consumption. I can, you know, move the energy consumption at the bottom and have the radio at the top. Or I could have the rear view camera at the top. Or I could switch that, put the rear view camera at the bottom and have phone controls at the top. Or, you know, I don't have the Tesla app, but you can sync your calendar to it. So you can kind of mix and match things. You can make things full screen, right? If I've got the web browser, I can make that full screen. You can use it, touch it, scroll it, just kind of like an iPad. And then at the bottom, we have our heated seat controls, our climate control, and volume control. And then we have extras. Here, this is where we can control things like the sunroof. We can open and close the sunroof. We can change the ride height settings of the car, change, like some of the driving things, steering. How do we want the steering feel to be? We got some trip meters. We've got, we can adjust the display. It can tell us that the vehicle's in park. It can also, when it's charging, we can see information about how much range we have and how much current it's taking to charge. So when we're ready to actually drive, you just have to touch the brake and the car wakes up from sleep mode. So you have this gauge in the middle. We've got our speedometer on the left-hand side, and on the right is its power. It's watts per mile or kilowatts per mile. So right now it's at 0. It's consuming, no power because we're not moving. And if I start accelerating, the harder I accelerate, the more this orange line is going to go up. And then when I let off on the gas pedal and it does its regenerative braking, this line will go down into the green, and that means it's actually making electricity from spinning the motor backwards. So, let's go. So you can see that the little orange bar, right, it goes up as I accelerate, and then if I lift off, it dips down to the green as I slow down, and then as it gets down to about 5 miles an hour, it no longer does the regenerative braking. Most of the time, driving around, except sometimes when you get caught off guard by a stoplight, you don't have to use the brake pedal. If you plan ahead, you see traffic, or you're coming up to a stoplight, all you have to do is just lift off the gas, and it slows the car down and makes electricity for you. Obviously, it doesn't make as much electricity as you're using total, but it does help extend your range a little bit. You can, of course, also step on the brake pedal, and it will regenerate as well, but it's not going to regenerate as much current because some of the energy is going to be used as heat between the friction of the brake pads and the brake disc. I have to say that other than the regenerative braking, it really, handles and feels just like any other car. The steering wheel feel, the progressiveness or linearity of the throttle pedal is the same, brake pedal is the same, turn signals are all the same. It really just drives like a regular car. If there's one thing I'm not very fond of, it can be a little distracting, having the internet in the car with you. I can press the button for the navigation, or something that's a little bit less benign than a website, but there's always something displayed on that screen. I have not found a way to just turn the screen off. I kind of wish it had a night mode or a dark mode, or just like hide everything. From an efficiency standpoint, it's a very streamlined car, and the exterior mirrors are pretty small, so you don't get a great view of what's behind you in the side mirrors. And the rear view mirror here, it's a pretty small opening in the back hatch, the way it slopes down, so you also don't get a very good view of what's happening behind you. I can't always turn the rear view camera on at any time when I want and see that on the display, so I guess that could almost be like a rear view mirror to some degree. But again, it's a little distracting always seeing that. The quietness of driving is really a pleasure. You don't realize it actually until you get into another car back to back and you realize, gee, engines create a lot of noise in cars. You also don't realize most of the noise we hear right now is the tire noise. I imagine different tires make different sounds. I certainly know snow tires make a different sound on the road than regular tires. And there's a little bit of wind whistling noise around the car. But I would say, 2/3 of the noise is probably coming just from the tires alone. I'm on a quiet road by myself, so we'll do a full acceleration start here. So in about, 2.5, 3 seconds or so, we're up to really the speed limit. There isn't a lot to see under the car, because there's mostly this big flat gray panel, which, that's the battery pack. It's all in aluminum, it's not magnetic, to keep it lightweight, and it really takes up kind of the whole bottom of the car. The front of the car has like a little plastic, belly pan there. And then on the back of the car, there's also like a little plastic belly pan that has a few little kind of diffuser vanes on it. So I'm going to take that back panel off and see what's inside. I'm not entirely sure what part is what, but I can tell you that in the front, this little unit here, this is your differential, because that's where the drive shafts come out of. The drive shaft comes out of each side to go to each rear wheel. So this is rear wheel drive only. And on this little gearbox, there is some sort of diff fluid. You see a drain plug. There's a fill plug up there. And then these two, big units, they're warm because I just came in from driving. This one has a plug going to it and a warning that says high voltage. And this one on this side has feels like a coolant pipe coming out of it, so I think it must use some sort of liquid cooling, which probably also aids in heating the vehicle. I don't know if one of these, I don't know if it uses one unit for the go and one for the regenerative braking, or if it's using two units simultaneously for go and braking. But that's essentially the heart of the machine right there. That kind of whole unit is all bolted to this subframe, so really this can come out, I think, in one complete unit if it ever had to be serviced or replaced. And then again, you have our batteries under this big gray panel, and if I look real close, there's even a warning sticker that says, warning, high voltage parts inside. So this whole big gray thing is probably a few inches thick is the battery pack. And I can see up here, there's some orange cables, high voltage cables. Don't touch those, don't cut into those. Don't let the squirrels bite into them. Again, here's another fluid line, liquid cooling for something. But the castings are nice. A lot of them have the Tesla logo on them. A lot of the aluminum castings are from Canada. They say made in Canada. A lot of the plastic parts so far I've looked at say made in the United States. So it is certainly a North American car. I really haven't got any idea how heavy this Tesla is, but I bet it's pretty heavy because this is a pretty massive brake system on this car. It's a pretty large diameter disc and a pretty large caliper, larger than most standard calipers you see on sedans. The front suspension is pretty neat. It's mostly cast aluminum pieces. It does have the the air ride adjust shock absorber here. So there's no actual separate spring and shock. It is just all one unit, and that's how it can change its ride height, and it can change its ride, make it stiffer or less stiff. And then you've got your steering tie rod in the front, and in fact this control arm setup, you see two ball joints at the bottom here, so it's really kind of a front control arm and a rear control arm. So as you steer, as it pivots, this whole part will kind of move a little bit, move in and out. So it's a pretty neat setup. And the rear suspension is also relatively straightforward. Again, pretty big caliper and brake disc for a car this size, leading me to believe it's quite heavy. And the shock absorber there is again the air shocks. The uses air pressure to make the spring. It does have both front and rear have a ride height sensor, or so they can determine the position of the suspension arms to know the height of the vehicle. And then there's this extra little brake caliper here. This is your parking brake. Now everything on the Tesla is electric. I mean, other than the hydraulic brakes. But there's no regular hand brake. It's all electrically actuated. You can see the little electric actuator right there to clamp down on the disc, on the brake disc. But the door handles are electric, the seat adjustments are electric, the steering wheel adjustments are electric. It's a very electric car. And you can see the drive shaft, the black shaft down here, kind of in the middle. That's the drive shaft going to the rear wheels. And the upper link of the suspension is really these two links, one here and one here. And the bottom link is more like a kind of a conventional control arm or wishbone. I guess the best part about a Tesla is you never have to go to a gas station. So I've driven it a little bit. Now it's time to charge up. There's a charger that comes with the car. It was in the trunk, and it had two adapters. One adapter was for a 110 standard outlet, and then the other adapter was for a 50 amp 220 outlet. I had tried charging with the 110 outlet, but it was very slow. It only was about 3 miles of range per hour of charge, which to do a full charge would take about 4 days. However, I have a welder, and I have an extension cord for my welder, so I got the right plug for that. So I'm able to plug in the Tesla charger into the 50 amp 220, and so now it charges at a rate of, I don't know, close to 30 miles of range per hour. So on the little handheld unit here, there's a little button. So you press this button, and it pops the charge port door open. And then you just stick it in. It uses a magnet to lock it in place. And then when it turns green and blinks, it means that it's charging. And then down on the floor, the little unit down here also has a little green thing that goes along it. And if we open the car up, we can see that on the screen here it tells us that it's charging, and it says that it's going to take 2 hours or 3 hours or so before reaching full charge, and it'll tell us here what rate it's charging at. So right now it's 20 miles per hour, 20 miles range per hour of charge, and that number will creep up as it keeps charging. I think it actually also depends on how full the battery is. I think when the battery is much lower, it charges at a faster rate, and then as the battery gets closer to full, it tapers off and starts charging at a slower rate. So we can actually see here that it's pulling 40 amps, 40 amps, at 234 volts. So I guess that's the line voltage at my house here, 234, 235. And you could limit that if you needed. You could reduce the current to make it lower, and you can also tell it to stop charging at a certain point. And I think you can also schedule a charge, like if your electric rate is less at night, you could say that you wanted it to charge at night. And the little picture here on the screen shows the cable plugged in and the door open, because I'm sitting here with the door open.